As the storm surrounding the Logan and Forrester families continued to intensify, the coming weeks promised to unleash a chain of emotional confrontations, shattered loyalties, and family divisions that would leave lasting scars across everyone involved. The latest turmoil began when Hope Logan Spencer found herself standing at the center of yet another devastating fallout, fully aware that repairing the damage she had caused would not come easily. Deep down, Hope understood that if she had any chance of restoring peace with the people she loved most, especially her mother, she would have to confront painful truths and accept the consequences of choices that had already begun tearing relationships apart. The weight of regret sat heavily on her shoulders as she prepared herself for the conversation she knew was inevitable. Unfortunately for Hope, the forgiveness she desperately longed for was far from guaranteed. In fact, the emotional storm waiting ahead would prove far harsher than she could have imagined. Very soon, Brooke Logan Forrester would be forced to listen as her daughter poured out an emotional plea, hoping to mend the fracture that now existed between them. Hope approached her mother carrying vulnerability, remorse, and the desperate desire to be understood, believing that perhaps Brooke's love would soften the situation enough to offer a path toward reconciliation. But this time, things were painfully different. Brooke, overwhelmed by disappointment and betrayal, was in no emotional state to offer the comfort Hope expected. Instead of finding compassion, Hope would come face to face with a version of her mother consumed by heartbreak and outrage. For Brooke, this wasn't simply a disagreement between mother and daughter. To her, this felt like a betrayal that struck far deeper than words could ever express. At the very same time, chaos was beginning to spread like wildfire throughout Forrester Creations, creating yet another crisis the company simply could not afford. The week ahead would bring a devastating ripple effect after yet another member of the powerful Forrester dynasty found themselves crossing over into Logan territory. It had all begun when Eric Forrester himself made a surprisingly brief but undeniably impactful appearance at Logan. Though his involvement had not lasted long, the move had sent shockwaves through the company, creating tension where stability had once existed. Now, Hope had followed with a dramatic move of her own, and suddenly the carefully balanced foundation at Forrester Creations was beginning to crack under immense pressure. Executives found themselves scrambling as the press quickly caught wind of the unfolding drama, turning private family conflict into a public relations disaster. The timing could not have been worse. Eric and his team were already carrying enormous pressure as preparations for the highly anticipated fashion show loomed dangerously close on the horizon. Months of work, creative investment, and company reputation were all hanging in the balance. And now this family war threatened to overshadow everything they had built. Behind closed doors, urgent conversations would begin as executives debated whether postponing the event might be the safest option. Yet canceling would come with its own consequences, adding even more financial and emotional strain to an already fragile situation. Every passing moment pushed tensions higher, and no one could predict whether the company would survive this latest internal explosion intact. As if things weren't already complicated enough, Brooke's fury would soon redirect towards someone else she believed played a role in this betrayal. Katie Logan Spencer would suddenly find herself caught directly in Brooke's emotional crossfire. Brooke, devastated by Hope's actions, would unleash her frustration on Katie, unable to understand why her own sister had welcomed Hope into a place she now viewed as symbolic of betrayal. But Katie stood firm in her reasoning. In her eyes, she had simply offered Hope something she desperately needed, a place where she could feel valued, respected, and creatively free in ways she had long been denied elsewhere. Katie genuinely believed she had done the right thing, even if Brooke was too wounded to see it. Meanwhile, Hope herself remained determined not to give up on repairing the relationship with her mother. Gathering every ounce of courage she had left, She would plead for Brooke's forgiveness, hoping that somewhere beneath all the anger, her mother's love might still win out. But Brooke's heartbreak ran too deep. The emotional devastation she felt over what she viewed as her daughter's betrayal refused to allow room for immediate reconciliation. The pain transformed quickly into decisive action. It soon became clear that Brooke might force Hope and Liam Spencer to begin making entirely new living arrangements, a move that would send yet another shockwave through the fractured family dynamic. For Hope, the consequences of her choices were beginning to feel devastatingly real. Elsewhere, another relationship was beginning to unravel under the crushing weight of broken trust. Electra Forrester found herself grappling with feelings of betrayal after uncovering painful truths surrounding Will Spencer and the secrets he had been keeping hidden. What had once felt stable and promising now suddenly seemed fragile and uncertain. The emotional damage ran deep enough that Electra could no longer imagine remaining under the same roof with him, while her heart remained shattered. Every glance at Will now served as a painful reminder of deception, and distancing herself felt like the only way she could begin processing the hurt. The possibility of moving out quickly became more than just an emotional reaction. It was beginning to feel like a necessary act of self-preservation. As the following week unfolded, the tension between Will and Electra showed absolutely no signs of improving. Their relationship remained trapped in unresolved conflict, with emotional wounds still far too fresh for healing to begin. Watching this chaos unfold from the sidelines, R.J. Forrester might soon see an unexpected opportunity emerging before him. Concerned for Electra and drawn by genuine sympathy, R.J. could quickly step into the role of emotional rescuer. His comforting presence might become exactly what Electra needs during one of the most painful periods of her life. And as emotional vulnerability often blurs boundaries, there remained the very real possibility that comfort could unexpectedly evolve into something more intimate. A kiss, born from heartbreak and timing, could change everything. But while Electra struggled through betrayal, Will himself would not be left entirely alone in facing the consequences of his actions. Melissa Dillon might soon reach out, recognizing the overwhelming backlash crashing down around him. With Electra furious and relationships beginning to fracture around him, Will could find himself emotionally isolated, desperately needing someone willing to offer understanding rather than judgment. Melissa's support might provide a temporary source of relief amid the growing chaos. Still, no amount of outside comfort could erase the damage already done. Will would soon learn that rebuilding trust after betrayal rarely happens quickly, especially when emotions remain dangerously raw. Back at the center of the Logan-Forrester war, another explosive confrontation was rapidly approaching. Hope Logan and Steffy Forrester Finnegan were once again on a collision course, and this particular showdown promised to be especially intense. The long-standing tension between these two women had already survived years of conflict, resentment, and rivalry, but now everything threatened to boil over once more. Steffy, never one to remain silent when family loyalty was challenged, would almost certainly have strong words waiting for Hope. Yet her anger might not stop there. If Steffy discovered that Liam Spencer had actually encouraged Hope's move toward Logan, Liam himself could suddenly become the next target standing directly in Steffy's line of fire. Meanwhile, in another corner of this complicated family web, Sheila Carter found herself anxiously awaiting news tied to an entirely separate but equally dangerous battle. Her ongoing divorce negotiations had reached a critical turning point, but Sheila had drawn a firm line that she refused to cross. She would not sign the divorce papers, not until Taylor Hayes managed to convince Steffy to approve a deeply controversial family visitation arrangement. Sheila's demand was simple on the surface, but emotionally explosive underneath. She wanted access to her family. More specifically, she wanted monitored visits that would allow her to spend time with John Finnegan and Hayes Finnegan, something Steffi had fiercely opposed for obvious reasons. As the week of July 13th through 17th arrived, Taylor Hayes would finally prepare to present Sheila's request directly to Steffi. But from the very beginning, resistance seemed inevitable. The moment the proposal was introduced, Steffi would likely reject it with immediate certainty, refusing even to entertain the possibility. In her mind, allowing Sheila any access at all would be like opening the front door to chaos, danger, and future destruction. Steffi knew better than anyone the devastation Sheila had caused repeatedly in the past. She had spent too much time protecting her family to now willingly invite fresh danger into their lives. The idea of Sheila spending time around Finn, and especially around young Hayes, felt absolutely unthinkable. Still, Taylor would not give up easily. She might argue passionately that the arrangement being proposed was extremely limited, involving only a few carefully monitored visits each month. Taylor could insist this compromise might actually create stability rather than danger. In her eyes, giving Sheila controlled access could prevent future volatility, reducing the chances of Sheila becoming desperate enough to spiral completely out of control. It was an argument built entirely on damage prevention, not trust. Taylor wasn't asking Steffi to forgive Sheila. She was simply suggesting that denying her entirely could eventually create consequences far worse than a carefully supervised compromise. Eventually, Finn himself would be forced to step directly into the middle of this emotional battlefield, and his opinion could complicate everything even further. If Finn found himself agreeing with Taylor's reasoning, the disagreement between husband and wife could ignite an entirely new source of conflict within the marriage. For Steffi, feeling unsupported on a matter this serious would only deepen her frustration. Yet there remained another possible compromise quietly forming beneath the surface. Perhaps Steffi might reluctantly consider allowing Finn some contact with Sheila, while continuing to keep Hayes completely protected and far removed from the situation. But even that fragile middle ground would come with enormous emotional consequences. No matter what decisions were made in the weeks ahead, one truth remained impossible to ignore. Sheila Carter had built a reputation that followed her everywhere she went. Trouble seemed to move alongside her like an unavoidable shadow. And history had repeatedly proven that peace never lasted when Sheila was involved. Families had already been broken, trust had been shattered countless times, and danger often arrived the moment people began believing things were finally calm. As these explosive weeks unfolded, tensions across every family connection would continue tightening like a ticking clock approaching midnight. Betrayal, heartbreak, loyalty, and revenge were all preparing to collide. And in the unpredictable world surrounding these families, the biggest explosions often came when everyone least expected them.